What is happening, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast, where we are here to help you be happy, healthy, wealthy, and get better every single day. The guest I'm about to bring on, he went through a major transformation after going through some personal development, and some of the stuff we talk about, it's so applicable. How many people didn't follow their dreams, didn't pursue what they really wanted to do because they were people pleasers, or they wanted to make sure that they made mom and dad happy, the expectations, and that's what this gentleman we talk about. It's so awesome. Today's guest is Deekron Krikorian, MBA, a high-performance coach who helps entrepreneurs and achievers reclaim their confidence, energy, and consistency. A former Big Four CPA, consultant, and tech founder, Deekron created High Healthy Performance Method, featured in his best-selling book, The 9 Shifts. He's a wellness keynote speaker, accountability coach, and has worked with brands like EY, Accenture, Pepsi, and Procter & Gamble, with features in the Washington Post and Business Insider.
Well, Deekron, brother, it's so good to see you, and thanks for your patience as we were trying to. I couldn't get sound, is what I'm talking about, you guys, and it's on my end. But brother, I'm so glad to have you here. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thanks for having me, JM. I'm doing well. We got some better weather here in New York, so that always helps the mood,
Yeah, man, for sure. When that's the first day when it's really nice. New York, Chicago, these areas where it's cold, it's a sight. So definitely enjoy it. Well, brother, you wrote this amazing book. You've done some cool stuff. Tell me just kind of the quick and dirty of your story, man. How are we sitting in front of this evolved man that we have today?
Yeah, I guess reluctant hero kind of story is mine. So you know what is, JM? I think what inspired me to do what I do now is partly my own struggles, but also wanting to pay forward, I guess, like just a really great upbringing that I'm grateful for. So I'll start with that. I was born in Romania. My dad was a professional athlete there. He was a rugby player. And growing up, he really instilled the importance of, exercising, taking care of your body, eating well, sleeping well, obviously education, manners, all these things, like they just weren't optional growing up. Like you just had to do them. So he was a disciplinarian that way. And I think like having been brought up with that mindset, even though like my brother and I hated it when we were young, we would resist it. I think over time we realized how, blessed we were to have that foundation. And that's partly what I do is I pay that forward, because I think sometimes people struggle with discipline. Sometimes they struggle with consistency. And because they didn't have that benefit that I had, I pay that forward. But also, when I was transitioning from corporate to entrepreneurship, which is something I had dreamt of for a long time, I really struggled in that transition. I felt stuck. I was spinning my wheels. I was feeling anxious, directionless. And that made me want to try to understand, okay, what's going on with me? It was like I was a high achiever. I went to like a great business school. I'd done work for top consulting firms. But then here I am in like uncharted territory, not knowing what to do and not understanding why I wasn't moving forward. So long story short, I did a lot of personal development work, and it really helped me understand myself better and overcome the things that were stopping me or causing me to feel unhappy or stressed or, too much perfectionism or whatever was getting in my way. I was able to overcome. And it was such a, I guess, powerful experience that I wanted to start teaching others the same.
What was it for you, brother, that, because oftentimes we kind of glaze over these major experiences, such as the personal development. Two questions, I guess. Was there a specific book? Was there a specific program that was like, holy cow, this explains it all for me, or this at least gives me a roadmap? And then what was one of those things getting in your way? Because clearly you overcame it and you probably continue the work, but I'd be curious to see, was there one program, one book that spoke to you? And also, what was the blockage that you really were able to overcome?
Yeah, great question. So you know what it is, JM? I would say the program that I started down the path of personal development and growth was an organization called Landmark Education. and they have offices all over the world. And my cousin was doing the work at the time. And at first I was like, I'm not sure this is really for me. But then the more stuck I felt, the more I was like, I think I need some answers. And then I went there, and it was so eye-opening. I mean, you're in a room with hundreds of people, and you kind of hear their stories and their struggles. And then you start to express your own struggles. And it was really like one of the only times in my life that I just like put everything else on pause for like 3 or 4 days and just focused on me, to really learn about myself, learn about how the mind works, psychology, all these things that they put forth. And that was just so eye-opening. It was almost like being reborn, honestly. It was, my cousin says it's kind of like that part in the Matrix where Neo, like, he finds so like Morpheus finds Neo in the pod, and he like rips him out, and he's like has to start his whole life over. You kind of feel like that, it's like you're raw again, you're born again, and you're like, shit, like, I realize now this is all the stuff that I went through. I realized this was all the baggage I was carrying, or all the blocks that I had, and now I have to start over. And it was really, I guess, hard, emotionally hard, but also very freeing. And so I guess the blocks that I struggled with, I think there was definitely like perfectionism and people pleasing. I was doing both of those things, not realizing it. I was kind of like the A student, the teacher's pet, trying to always make my parents happy. But because of that, I was growing up with someone else's rules. I wasn't really expressing who I was. And for example, my parents had a big influence on me, for better or for worse, mostly for better. But my dad he was a banker, and he was, we were immigrants to this country, so he believed that a safe job, a good job, is more important than like following your dreams. And so, I kind of went into accounting and became a CPA. He was a banker, so he kind of like led me down what he thought was the best thing for me at the time. But I realized like that's not who I am. And I need to be more creative. I need to be more innovative. And just those careers didn't allow me to do that. And so learning to like not have to people please as much, and learning to trust my own voice more, was one of the big transformations I went through.
Yeah, and it's not the first time, and probably certainly not the last time. Your parents want the best for you, right? And so they want to protect you. And like you said, coming from Romania, you have that stable job that takes care of you. That was, kind of the message you heard from your dad, or maybe both your parents. But what was that conversation like for you, brother, when you said, you know what, mom, dad, like, I found my purpose, and it's not in accounting. It's I'm going to go write this book, and I'm going to go out there, and I'm going to be this entrepreneur, which probably scared the living shit out of them if they were like my parents. I know my parents were like, who are you? No, like, I want protection, and this is safe. And yet it didn't resonate at all for me. Did you have that big conversation, and how did it go? Because I think this is where people get stuck, is they don't want to disappoint their parents. They do want to people please. What did that look like for you, man, when you made that choice?
Yeah, I'll tell you what it looked like for me, and also share with you, JM, why we people please and why we're so hell bent on acceptance. Because we know we are, but we don't quite understand why we are. And doing the work, writing my book, I understood why that happens in the first place. So yeah, when I started realizing that I was living by someone else's rules, and that it wasn't giving me happiness and was keeping me stuck, that part of what they do in that first weekend at Landmark is, when you uncover what they call like a pretense, or when you uncover an inauthenticity, you kind of have to clean it up. And sometimes it's like you're just being a jerk to somebody, and it's time to clean that up. Or some of it is just about speaking your truth. And I think when I got clear that I was just like following somebody else's story or image or rules, like I was like, I gotta call my dad and tell him that, like, like, I'm my own person now. And honestly, that's the hardest call I've ever made. My hands were literally shaking, because I think it's the first time in my life that I spoke up that way for myself, and was risking disappointment. I was risking upsetting them. I was risking not being loved, in a sense. And that's the segue to what I want to share. In that, you may have heard this before, but our ancestors were tribal people, and they were very, very focused on being accepted by the people around them. And if they were not accepted by them, that could potentially mean death. If our tribe didn't protect us, we'd be out on our own, we'd be abandoned, and somebody else could like mess with us, hurt us, kill us, whatever. And so we have this subconscious need to be accepted, because acceptance is associated with love. And so what we'll do is anytime we feel like we're not being accepted, like we're not measuring up, we're not smart enough, we're not happy enough, we're not successful enough, we're not pretty enough, etc., we start feeling subconsciously anxious, subconsciously worried, and then we do what I call overcompensate. So I have a chapter called Limiting Beliefs in my book, if I can just hold it up real quick, which is called the 9 shifts. So these are 9 shifts that we have to make if we want to be our best in our body and our life. And in one of the chapters, I talk about limiting beliefs and really like, what do you believe about yourself that isn't true, that's impacting your self-worth, and how are you overcompensating for that? Because you've been overcompensating for that since you've been a child. You just didn't know it. And so that was what I was doing. I was overcompensating by people pleasing, doing everything dad said or doing everything what mom wanted. And now it was time to just step up and say, hey, I'm in my mid 30s. I don't need to keep living this way. But a lot of people never make that realization. They never have that epiphany or that, discovery about themselves.
So how did the call go, brother? Your hands are shaking, and hey, Dad, great to talk to you. I know you moved our family over here, and I know you did. I mean, these are the things. Look, my wife's family, came from Thailand and China, and there's some pressure there, right?
Yes.
We came here so you can have a better life. I mean, there's a lot of pressure there. How did that look like? So hands are shaking. Dad picks up the phone, and
Yeah. Dad picks up the phone and I'm like, hey, Dad, I'm here at the seminar. I got something to tell you. And he was like, okay, what? And I said, you know what, Dad, I'm learning a lot of good stuff this weekend. But one thing I want you to know is that like I can't just keep doing what you want me to do. I have different ideas for myself. It didn't go great. He was kind of like, all right, well, whatever, just do whatever you want. It's like one of those responses. But no, but really, Jim, it did cost me. And I'm glad you shared that about your wife, because I would say, when I was in grad school, I met somebody that I was crazy about, but I felt like she wasn't going to be accepted into the family. And she was actually Asian also. And because of that, I kind of didn't even broach the subject. And that's when I was like rewinding back a few years, like my late 20s. But I feel it really cost me. It cost me who at that time was like really the love of my life. And I gave that up because I was afraid she wasn't going to be accepted, like by my parents, by my community, by my church, all that stuff. And it was very, very painful. It was like probably the hardest thing I had gone through. But now when I started doing my transformation work, I was like, I can't do that anymore. I can't give up someone who loves me or something that's really true for me because somebody else might not accept it. I have to be willing to risk non-acceptance. I have to be willing to risk that pain.
Yeah, and look, so everybody's clear. My wife and I dated for a year before her parents knew that there was a white guy coming around, like kind of permanent. Now, we're as close as can be now, but there was a lot of fear. And I just want people to hear it that, you know what, this is your life. And that's maybe where we'll wrap with your dad. But so, Dad, just do whatever the heck you want. Now that you're in it, has he embraced it? Because look, our parents want us to be happy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
The fact remains, they want us to be happy. No matter the traditions, where they came from, expectations, they may say, well, you have to do it this way because it's the Romanian way, or you have to be, in my wife's culture, like being a doctor or, doing certain things was pretty important. And, I think my wife had the freedom to say, no, I'm going to pursue it at a much earlier age than some. So how has Dad now embraced it and said, you know what, Deekron, I'm just fired up. You're happy, brother. Or, he probably wouldn't call you brother, but I'm just happy you're happy, son. And I couldn't be happier that you made this decision. Or was it ever really accepted? What did it look like?
No, it's a great question. I'm glad we're kind of having this open conversation, JM. And no, my dad is so loving. He's incredible. He's like the ultimate father, and for sure, he just wants me to be happy, and he's supportive. I later, years after doing my transformation work, I did get married. They were a little resistant at the first. I mean, my ex-wife was Latin, and my current girlfriend is Latin, and they've both been. It's been a transition process. Sometimes I feel with both my parents, they're strong-willed and opinionated and really smart, and they have really high standards for us and themselves. And so they want us to be with the right people. But Their perspective is not always my perspective. So there's a little bit of resistance at the beginning, and it makes me feel like, oh yeah, they want us to be happy as long as it's on their terms, kind of thing. But no, I mean, in the end, I know that they both love us to death, and like over time, they'll accept it because, like you said, if we're suffering, they're gonna suffer.
Yeah, it's such an important subject because our parents have fears and insecurities, and ultimately some of those get impressed upon us. And when they're saying don't be an entrepreneur, or don't marry outside of, you said, the tribe, that's just fears and insecurities and the unknown. And ultimately, if you're feeling a certain way, guys, my audience listening right now, and you're not pursuing what you know is your purpose, your path, your passion, step up, deal with it, because I promise you, you don't want to be on your deathbed saying, I wish I had X. So let's talk about the book, man. 9 shifts. Why 9? I'm a big number guy. Numerology is huge for me. Is it in that realm, or you were going through it and you're like, you know what? 9 is just, that's how many it is. What was it? How'd you come up with the title?
Sure. Well, I'll give you the backstory, GM. So the first book that I wrote, I scrapped and I started over. But the first book had 10. So it was like 10 challenges people had to overcome. And then there was like a 4-step method and then 8 habits. It wasn't quite lining up. But then when I scrapped the first book, I started rethinking the framework. And like sort of this like 3x3 framework is really popular. And it just seemed to flow once I aligned it to that. So I combined like the last 2 into one, and it became 9 instead of 10. But the way it breaks down is, so my view is it's holistic. So I believe that, we're more than just a mind, we're more than just a body, and these 2 things function within a life. So my 3 pillars are mind, body, and life. So those are 3 major categories. And under each of those 3 categories, there are 3 challenges each that we have to overcome. So in the area of mind, we have to overcome what I call internal stress. A lot of it stems from like, am I being accepted? Am I good enough? All of that stuff. Limiting beliefs. What do I believe is possible about me? Or, if I failed before, do I now think it's not for me, or I can't do it, kind of thing. And then motivation, which is tied to procrastination. So those 3 things we have to conquer under mind. Under the body category, a lot of my clients are midlife. So, at this point, our metabolism is slower. Our hormones are changing. Sometimes we have injuries, limitations. We got to keep the body at a good place so that we can have the energy and productivity we need as entrepreneurs, executives, parents, etc. And then the third category, life, it's really managing external stressors. So this, like, let's say a conversation that triggers you, a negative relationship that's affecting you, the news could be affecting you. Right? We have to manage the outside impact on our emotional state. Number 2 under life is limited time. A lot of us are busy, but we still have to find ways to fit in a balance and a healthy routine. And then finally, travel and social is like when we're in those situations, we're tempted to eat and drink too much of the bad stuff. So we have to manage that as well. So those are my 9.
Got it. So if I'm going through the book and I'm like, well, geez, Deekron, 9 things, man, I can't do all 9 things. What would you say to that person that's like, hey, you eat an elephant 1 bite at a time? We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for progress. What's kind of your philosophy for it, brother? If I were to read your book and it's like, I know I'm going to get something from it, but if you were to coach people through it, to be like, all right, when you read this, this is how to apply. And maybe it's all spelled out in the book. I haven't had a chance to read it, but I'm just curious with that framework, how do you get people to just really implement so that they didn't read this awesome book and go, gosh, that's a great idea, and I forgot to do any of it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And these days, we're so bombarded with information that we don't have a lot of attention. We don't have a lot of time. And when we want to take on something that's daunting, the mind will resist it. So yes, absolutely. It is a big book. It covers a lot of ground. But I would say 2 things. One, you could just treat it like a manual. Just turn to the challenge that you feel is stopping you the most. So if you feel your motivation level keeps dipping, just go to that chapter and work on that. Or if you feel you're feeling a lot of imposter syndrome and stress, then just go to the emotions chapter and deal with that. That's what I would say for one. And also at the end, I boil it down to just like 5 things, like these 5 habits. If you keep these 5 habits every week, you're going to be in really great shape. And that's everything from like having a morning routine that empowers your mind, preparing your own meal so that you're not eating garbage when you're out, doing a little bit versus nothing, not having perfectionism where you're just like putting things off. Be happy with like a 10-minute walk. Don't wait to do the hour-long workout if it's going to take you 2 weeks to get there, that kind of thing. And then just being very, I would say, intentional about scheduling your stuff, because I've seen so many clients, go into like Monday with the best of intentions, and then their weeks go crazy. And before they know it, the week's over. They haven't done anything in terms of their routine, their mindfulness, their self-care kind of thing.
So let's start with the morning routine. I'm a big advocate of morning routines. I would say for mine, I'm actually in a process currently, literally this morning, of scaling mine back because it became a bit
Too much.
started owning me a little bit.
Yeah.
What would you say to the morning routine? Because it's ultimately supposed to lift you up. It's supposed to make you better, not be so daunting that like, oh, jeez, man, I got to get this morning routine done.
Yeah.
Which I found myself in those shoes. As much as I preached it, I'm like, dude, my morning routine was like 3 hours long. It's too much.
Yeah.
So what does it look like for you?
Sure. There's been a lot of talk around morning routines, and we can add so much stuff to it. So I totally know what you mean. For me, it's not long. It's usually a 15-minute process. And it's gotten to the point, JM, where like if I don't do it, I don't feel good going to my day without it. So for me, I think I call it the 3 M's in the AM. So the first M is mindfulness. The second one is metabolism. The third one is music. So if I'm doing those 3, I'm good. And they're usually about 5 minutes each. Sometimes I'll meditate for a little longer, but basically I'll start my day by moving my body. I'll stretch, I'll do some squats, I'll just get the blood flowing, the metabolism up. Under mindfulness, I will basically close my eyes, give some gratitude, take some deep breaths. I've got like a little thing I go through with an affirmation, but basically just something to ground me and get me grateful. And then music, I think, is just an instant mood booster, instant emotional state shifter. So, I might just go down, like this morning, I went downstairs to my building gym. I did 5 minutes of rowing to some music. Already I'm in a good state, a little stretching from there. And then you could feel yourself with like a small breakfast, but a good breakfast to kind of get the metabolism going. And that's kind of all I need.
Got it. How are you checking in to say, gosh, this is fulfilling me? Do you have a process where you stop and you go, all right, I'm living my best life? Do you have that checklist? Are you constantly just internally checking it out? What does it look like, brother? Because I know for me, when I get so entrenched in some of my habits and routines, I've forgotten to actually check in and be like, hey, am I getting the ROI for all I'm putting in? Do you have something where you check in, whether it's on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis?
I don't have that kind of check-in. It probably would be good to do that. I think right now I kind of just listen to my intuition and be like, if to me, I kind of judge my progress in terms of like how good is my mindset staying? Am I going negative? Am I getting frustrated? Am I starting to think doom and gloom because something's not working out, let's say? Is my business growing the way I want it to grow? Or am I attracting the right kind of clients? Am I consistent with my content? All those like little metrics, I think, tell me if I'm on track or not. In the past, when my emotional regulation or mastery wasn't as good, I would get more down for longer. And then I would see myself getting irritated, or I would see myself judging other people or just being harsh to them or to myself. And now those episodes are much, much less. So I know that I'm progressing. But if I see that's creeping in again, I should maybe look at that. I should maybe change something,
Got it. So being self-aware of just kind of what's happening is what I'm hearing. So how has it gone, man, making this shift from corporate, kind of the CPA world to entrepreneur, consultant, helping companies? I mean, it's a major thing. It's a big shift for sure. And obviously it's not one of your 9 shifts, but it probably falls in there. But it's a big shift. How has that transition been for you? And can you ever imagine going back and doing it the opposite way?
That's a good question. So back in 2015, actually, I got divorced. My tech startup, which I had launched after leaving corporate, was going downhill, and I was trying to find what do I do. And I actually started interviewing a little bit, thinking I might, get full-time work again. But I just didn't have patience for the interview process. The entrepreneurial side was like, stop waiting for people, just do your thing. And so I just kind of dove into some other ideas. It hasn't been easy. I'll be honest. It's been challenging. Revenue wise, growth wise, has been challenging. I've had a few different iterations. I didn't go from corporate straight to being a coach. I went from corporate to being a tech startup founder. Then I was doing a little bit of marketing. Then I was coaching a bit more on the health side, and now I coach more on the performance and mindset side. So it's been an evolution, and it has challenged me. It has pushed me, but I finally feel like, okay, I'm where I want to be. I'm on my purpose, and I'm finally going to see some profit from this.
Good. Yeah, look, it's never a linear process when you do this. And anytime, it's not like one day you went through Landmark and you're like, Psh, here's my purpose. I am clear as can be. It's rather, you know what? Here's what I know I don't want. And so that's what I'm hearing. You're feeling yourself around to say, well, I could do this tech startup, and maybe that is it. No, that's not quite it. I think people sometimes struggle with the fact that I'm not clear on my exact purpose in life, so I'm failing. And I'd like you to speak to that, because I'm hearing it in your voice to say, you know what? I didn't have it all figured out, and yet I was still more free. I'm still in a better place than I was when I was sitting in my cubicle, knowing that this is not where I want to be. And to use the matrix, like, I'm sitting in this matrix and it's just not for me. And by the way, it's not a judgment on it. Some people, that's exactly where they want to be. My best friend, that is exactly where he likes to live. But for me, that would be death by 1,000 cuts every single day. I would literally. So speak to somebody that's going through that, man. What's that been like for you as a mindset to say, you know what, that didn't work out and that's okay. Or this iteration wasn't quite right, but I'm finding my way. How have you kept positive and really been able to persevere so that you don't just go back to the CPA world? Because you could always do that, right? That's always been an option for you.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think a lot of people struggle with that, JM. And I think there's a few things to it. One, you have to listen to your calling. You have to get to know yourself better, and your intuition will lead you. Because for some people, it's okay. Like, their purpose is to work at a company and to raise a family and to have that kind of life. And there's nothing wrong or right about it, like you said. But I think some people just have a stronger calling. And if the situation you're in is limiting you, and this has to do with relationships too, by the way, not just jobs, like whatever you feel is truly limiting you and not allowing your true self to shine and pursue what fulfills you, then you have to listen to that voice. And if that keeps nudging you, then start exploring what life might look like. Just, what if you could wave a magic wand, what would your life look like? And if it has everything that's in it now, then you're probably on the right track. But if it looks way different than the situation you have now, that's telling you something. So, you spend a little bit of time with your thoughts, you do some journaling, you get into your heart, because the head's always going to give you pros and cons for everything. It's always going to vacillate between the two options, but your intuition is never wrong, and it's only going to give you what's true to you. And a lot of people don't spend time with themselves. They don't actually tap into their heart, into their intuition. The more you can do that, the more the answers will come. And then from that point, it's just a matter of not letting the fears or the outside voices, like we talked about, prevent you from pursuing it, just going for it.
Do that on a frequent basis? I talk about journaling and checking in. That's a huge part of my world. But as you said, some people being alone with themselves for, let's say, a day, that scares the living daylights out of them. I mean, I literally wrote my first book after being on a silent 3-day meditation in the woods with a tent and a gallon of water. That was all I had.
I love it.
And yet for some people, they're like, I couldn't do it. Do you have something that a ritual, if you will, that you do, or is it just, it's time for me to decompress and go be with myself, go be with my thoughts? Do you have a specific routine that you follow for that?
I don't. I think what you did is super cool. I mean, somebody to spend time alone. I'm assuming maybe you were like fasting. You were taking like a break from electronics, all that stuff. That's amazing. That's like probably optimal. That's as good as it gets. But you don't have to quite get that extreme if you don't have the opportunity. I think at a minimum, people have to start reconnecting with what brings them joy. At a minimum, you got to start doing what truly reflects you. And that could be anything. It could be filling out a scrapbook. It could be building toy, like model planes. It could be flying a kite. I don't care as long as you are, what my cousin and I say, like feeding your soul. If you're feeding your soul and you're expressing who you truly are, and you could do enough of that in your current job or your current life, then that is going to make you happy. That's going to make you fulfilled. But if that part of you is being suppressed, like you're not allowing yourself to have fun, you're not allowing yourself to express who you are, you're not doing the things because maybe you don't have enough time, or maybe you've got pressure or perfectionism says you're not supposed to be doing that, you're not connecting with the deeper side of you. So it doesn't have to be like a big time ritual, but at a minimum, every week you want to allow yourself to have fun, express yourself, and then just build more on that.
Got it. So you mentioned that you had tried to write the book, or you actually had sounds like maybe a full manuscript, and said, rewrite, let's try this again. How long did the total process take you to write the 9 Shifts book?
It took a while. The first version took 6 months of really intense writing, because at the time my business had started going down in terms of generating leads and clients, and I wasn't sure which direction to take things. And I'd followed a gentleman who was a copywriter who taught you how to write a book and then create a book funnel. And then the idea was you'd get your book out there, and then people would read your book and they like your philosophy and they'd call you for support or coaching kind of thing. And unfortunately, it took a long time. So 6 months was the first version, but I realized I was trying to fit my thoughts into his template and it just didn't come out good. It ended up being a little bit more like too salesy. It just wasn't good. And one of the editors I was working with luckily called it out. And I said, wow, like she's right. This sucks. This book sucks. And we did a stop the presses at the last minute, and I scrapped it and we started over. So the first book was going to be called The Optimized Executive. And then I kind of wanted to make it more accessible for more people. So I was like, okay, I don't want it to be just for executives. I want it to be for anybody who just wants to be their best in mind and body. And so we kind of wrote it with that in mind. And so that process took almost a year. So I started writing in November of 2022. I think on my birthday, literally, I started writing the first version. I wrote about 300 pages by December 15th. It was my friend Marlene's birthday. I went out for a birthday. I was like, I'm finally going to take a break and go out. So I crushed it for 6 weeks. I took a break for the holidays. And in January through March of 23, I was like, okay, let's finish this book. Let's get it out. And then we did a stop the presses in March of 23. And then in January of 24 is when I published the 9 Shifts, like the final version.
All right. So how much imposter syndrome, how much of that perfectionist came out in that process? Because I know for me, the first book, I was not a writer. Who am I to be putting this thing out? I'm not a perfectionist. I've never had that. So that was an easy one for me.
Okay.
But I will say the editing for me, damn, I'm not a perfectionist. I can't imagine a perfectionist going through that process. That would be brutal. So how much of that came through for you, brother? How many times did you have to say, no, you are meant to do this? How many times do you have to stop that hardwire to say, don't be selfish, let's get this book out there? What did that look like for you?
Well, JM, the hardest thing I struggled with is, how they say that some people struggle with writer's block? I have the opposite problem. I have writer's diarrhea. So once I start, I just go and I go and I go. And I'll be honest, like this book itself is big. It's 400 pages, right? Because I cover all 9 bases of, I mean, I think like you read this book, you're not going to have to read pretty much almost any other health book, any other personal development book. It kind of has all of it. And, the first version was about 1,000 pages. So it was just me just kicking my ass every day to write and to write and to write. But I had a lot I wanted to share. So I had been coaching for almost 6 years at that point. I had the transformation work. I had my MBA. I had my corporate experience. I had a lot I wanted to share. But for me, again, like I overshare. So the next time I write a book, it's not going to be nearly this long. It's going to be much more digestible for people. That was my big lesson. But that was my biggest struggle. It was like I wrote so much, and then having to cut things down and then cut even more and cut even more was hard. That was my big challenge.
That makes sense, because when you said, "Hey, I started on my birthday in November, and by December I had 300 pages," I was dumbfounded. I'm like, dude, that is putting in work. That is, for anybody that hasn't written a book, that is putting in work. That is incredible. I want to shift gears just a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we have is our self community, which is all
Mm-hmm.
about taking care of yourself so you can show up as the best version. I know you mentioned your 3 M's with your morning routine. I'm curious, is there one habit that just stands out to you where you're like, this is the one habit that I do for me that has just been so incredibly impactful for me to really thrive and show up as the best version of me on a daily?
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good question. I think there's a few of them. I would say for most people, I would recommend just getting support and being around a tribe or a group of people that can lift them up and keep them on track. I think that's a big one. A lot of people need that accountability. As you can tell, I'm more of a self-starter, so I don't need that as much personally. But I would say the other big thing that has impacted me a lot is just getting a lot more aware of my nutrition and taking control of what I'm eating and eating, the right macronutrients, right micronutrients. Because when you optimize your nutrition, you optimize your thinking, your energy levels, how you look, how you feel. It plays a very, very big role. So for me, the minute I took control of nutrition and understood it at a deeper level, and now I'm even certified in like functional nutrition and metabolism, it elevated my life, and not just like how I look and my body in the gym and all that, but also like how I feel, how I function. It's just made a very big difference. And I think a lot of us eat unconsciously. I talk about that in the book. People have to go from being unaware and just grabbing and going food because they're just busy, to being a bit more structured and planned with it.
Yeah, and I think it's more important than it ever has been today with the quality of our food. One of your M's was metabolism, which you talked about moving the body, but this
Mhm.
particular point, look, the food that it was 20 years ago is different. There's way more ingredients. What you thought might be healthy, unfortunately, isn't.
Yeah.
Is there an easy guide for you to tell people to say, you know what? I wish everybody knew this about food, because you've made that point a couple times, like prepare your own food, being
Mhm.
intentional about it. I think people want to, but even stuff that they thought was relatively healthy, it's filled with fillers and preservatives and just shit.
Yeah.
Do you have kind of an easy answer to that? And I know it's not a complex answer, but I'm just curious if you're like, gosh, I wish everybody knew this with food, and this would help so many people.
Yeah, for sure. It's a great question. I'm glad you asked, because nutrition could get very complex. We see stuff on social media about the latest supplement or the latest study or the latest this, the latest that. And if you can just strip it all down to what's really, really, really important, I think is just stick to whole, clean foods, minimally processed foods. So what that looks like is having like an actual piece of chicken breast over a chicken sausage or a hot dog, because those have fillers, those are processed, those have colors, those have preservatives. But that that piece of chicken or that piece of fish is going to do much better for your body than something that's processed. So the less processed, the better it's going to be for you. So just shop around the outside of the supermarket and get the fresh veggies, the fruits, all the stuff we're familiar with, and be less tempted by the prepackaged stuff. Even though they make it sound healthy on the package, turn it over. Don't make the judgment on the front of the package. Turn it over and read the ingredients. And the more ingredients it has, the less you should want it.
That's a good point. Look, if you can't pronounce words on it, you probably shouldn't buy it.
Yes.
And you'll look, when you turn it over, just like Deekron said, like you turn it over and you look at it and you're like, I can't pronounce that word. Don't buy it. It's not real. I think that's where I've landed on this whole subject, man. I'm
Yeah.
so frustrated. And today, this will come out, later, but as of today, Maha, or Make America Healthy Again,
Mhm.
just hired this woman that I think she's going to do some incredible stuff on this. So this subject keeps coming up. Brother, I mean, I could ask you question after question. What didn't I know enough to ask you that you want to make sure to share with the audience? You're like, dude, we got to make sure to share this. What question didn't I know enough to ask you so you can make sure to get that across?
I love it. You're making me think here, JM. I would say, I guess because of the experience that I had and what we talked about earlier is like, don't underestimate the importance of the inner work, because we all go through stuff. We all go through traumas. They might be big, they might be small, but we're all affected by them. And you don't realize how much your emotional makeup as an adult was actually shaped by your childhood. And until you go back there, and like you did, you had those 3 days where you could just be by yourself and you could just get into yourself. Until you take that break, that moment of time where you just like focus on you for a little bit, it's very, very valuable. And if you're seeing constant patterns in your life, you're running into the same issues, you keep on having the same frustrations, you keep attracting the same wrong people into your life, or get the same crappy results in a certain area, you have a blockage there. And you have to understand how you've been wired and how your experiences have shaped you so that you can overcome those things. Because until I did that, I wasn't free to choose for myself. I'm 53 now. I might still be living under someone else's rules, under someone else's story. And yeah, I'm kind of like not where I want to be yet financially and all that, but it feels so much more true to myself. It's like, yeah, I'm struggling, but I'm struggling for a good reason. I'm not struggling because I'm stuck in something and I know it's not where I should be, and I'm just constantly unhappy and I see no way out of it.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite books, Viktor Frankl talks about it. If you're clear on your why, you can deal with any amount of how. And that's what I'm hearing for
Yeah.
you, Deekron. I'm so happy for you, brother. That's
Thank you.
incredible to say, you know what? Maybe I haven't hit my goals yet. But here's the funny thing. You're going to look back and this is the stuff that you're going to love. And you probably know that already. It's like, I love getting my ass kicked every day. I love not doing. That's the truth.
Yeah.
That's the stuff. That's the good stuff. You sell your companies and people think, oh, that's the pinnacle. No, it was the struggle that was so incredible. So we can support what you're doing, man. I'd love for people to know where to find you if they want to check out 9 Shifts. They want to just connect with you. Where's the best place to do that online?
Yeah, thanks, JM. So for people listening, my book again is called The 9 Shifts, like the number 9. You can find it on Amazon. You can also connect with me. It's actually really easy. I'm the only Deekron on LinkedIn and on Facebook because I spell my name phonetically. So if you just search for Deekron on Facebook, LinkedIn, I'll be there. And I think I'm one of the only people in the world that has my first name at gmail.com. Like most people can't get like Mike at gmail.com, something like that. But Deekron at gmail.com, so that I was able to secure that email address.
Dude, that is such an advantage. Leg up already, man. Just Deekron, go check him out. Deekron. Brother, you're an awesome dude. Congrats on the success with the book and not making it 1,000 pages, because I wouldn't read that one, but I'll read 400. I can do that. So thank you, brother, for coming on and sharing. It was awesome.
All right. Thanks, JM. It's been great to be here. Love your energy, and thanks for having me.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm absolutely going to check out the book, The 9 Shifts. I thought he was so vulnerable about some of the things he's been going through. And he's like, look, I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm going to get there. You can hear the grit and he's just so resolute in it. And I felt so much of what he talked about is applicable. I loved his simplicity to the morning routine with his 3 M's of mindfulness, metabolism, and music. And, for me, there's a lot I can take away from that to say, you know what? It doesn't have to be that long. It can be 15 minutes to do your morning routine. So I absolutely can see so much value for people to listen to this. So make sure that you share this with people that you like and care about, because there's so much that I felt Deekron shared that is so impactful. And also, guys, if you haven't had a chance to check out the Self community, please go check it out at letsgowin.com. It's an incredible group of people that is there to lift you up is there to keep you accountable, is there to challenge you. It's an incredible group of human beings, and I'm so blessed to be a part of it. And I'd love for you guys, if it's the right fit, if you're looking to upgrade anything in your life, I think it might be for you too. Check it out. And until next time, remember, your mindset matters. Appreciate you all. We'll talk soon.